Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame Showcase, brought to you by NASJA, and happy to have everyone joining us here today. We have 7 inductees who 2 weeks from now will be inducted here in Park City, Utah. And great to have everybody joining us here this evening. To kick it off, I'd like to introduce my good friend Charlie Sanders, who is the president of NASJA, for a few opening comments.
First of all, thanks to Tom Kelly for doing this. He is a longtime friend and member of NASJA, and it's terrific that he continues to make this kind of contribution to all of us throughout the community in emceeing these events. And also to Brian Fairbank. I've had the pleasure of working with both Brian and Tom at the Hall of Fame, and it's been a really great learning experience for me, and a lot of fun. Just a couple of words about NASJA so that you guys know who we are. We have a 3-word mission statement, basically, and that is to protect snow sports journalism. That means to do advocacy when it's necessary to protect speech freedoms, and with artificial intelligence now threatening journalism throughout the world, we're taking a stand in terms of credit, compensation, and consent. We want to present opportunities for professional development to snow sports journalists, and we want to be an information source. And that means doing projects like tonight, which gives us an informal setting where the athletes who have made such important contributions to the community, the business people, and the creators are given the opportunity to voice their own opinions, to tell their own stories, and to have the journalism community be able to enjoy and absorb that. So that's why we're here. Those are the reasons, and that's what we'll continue to do. But most of all, we take the approach at NASJA that we want to provide the human touch to a community and an industry that sometimes is now perceived as dominated by corporate interests. We tell human stories. We care about the people who have made the sport great, who continue to make the sport great, all of them, and who celebrate the history and the legacy of snow sports in the United States and Canada. And with that, I will turn it back to Tom. But thank you all for coming. We are so pleased to congratulate you in person as inductees, and so pleased that you're all joining us to participate.
Charlie, thank you for those great words, and particularly thank you for your leadership of NASJA. I now want to introduce the chair of the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. It's a role that I had a few years ago. Brian Fairbank has led a very progressive era with the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame, and he's here tonight to give you a welcome. Brian?
Thank you. How many of you have been to an induction ceremony before that are inductees coming forward? I can't see everybody's hands, but have you been to one before? I don't see many hands, so this is a special night. This is a night that you will remember for the rest of your life. I can assure you of that, because your passion for this industry, for skiing and snowboarding, has prevailed your entire life. And for the first time, you're perhaps going to get recognition from a different quarter, which is that of the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame, saying that you have, in fact, contributed greatly to this industry. And it's a night you honestly will not forget. I applaud all of you for being here this evening, but more importantly, being there in 2 weeks. And I look forward to watching all of you on the stage and enjoying your evening to your utmost pleasure.
Brian, thank you very much. And I just want to echo that. If you have not been to an induction, it has grown to become a true spectacle in the sport, and it's an evening that you don't want to miss. That said, it is sold out, but something to put on your calendar. Will be in Lake Placid in another year for the induction there. But we're going to talk with all 7 of the inductees that we have on the call. And just to give you a preview, on the line with us tonight, we have Ross Anderson, great speed skier, 2-time Olympic medalist Shannon Bahrke, mogul skier, Nordic combined Olympic champion Billy Demong. Great World Pro Ski champion Hank Kashiwa is with us. Jake and David Moe, the founders and the spirit of Powder Magazine. Les Otten, an amazing resort developer, and Mike Porter, who spent nearly a half or over a half century in snow sports education. So I'd like to introduce Ross Anderson. Ross is a speed skier who, get this, hit a speed of 247.934 kilometers an hour in 2006. It is still the fastest speed ever recorded by an American. Ross is a Native American, and that heritage has certainly played into his career and what he's done in giving back. And Ross, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I got to start it out, Ross, and ask, what is it like skiing at 154 miles an hour? That's crazy.
Well, it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of training, a lot of years to do that fast of a speed. I've been doing it on the World Cup and professional level for 17 years. And obviously, you know, the more you do it, the better you're going to get, the more practice. Basically, what you do is you train your mind to get in that zone, the zone of being so into your body, inner outer body experience, that things are slower in front of you than they really are, and that you're able to adjust things, micro adjust things when you're going that fast. A mile long course takes 23 seconds. So 23 seconds in that mile course, you're able to, you know, work with the wind, the drag, the wind pressure, and everything that goes with it. You know, you just have to be in control all the time, mentally, physically, and you know, your health is got to be there as well.
Well, it's crazy. And I don't know at that speed how you make those little micro adjustments. I know the story of how you first discovered the sport, but it's a really fun story. Can you tell the folks how you first discovered speed skiing?
So I have a friend in Durango. That's where I grew up, is in Durango, named Dale Womack. He's the one that kind of introduced me to the sport of speed skiing. During that time, that was in '92, when they had the demonstration sport for speed skiing in Albertville for the Albertville Olympics. And he was one of the contestants to be there. But I also raced with him during my growing up, and he was in college. So we actually shared the same race shack, and that's how we got to know each other. I was obviously younger. So, you know, he kind of introduced me to a little bit more about it, because I was interested. You know, I saw the magazines back in the day where they had, you know, Franz Weber and all the other racers that looked really cool with these tight suits. The helmets were, you know, so out of this world, and it was just the coolest thing to look at and whatnot. And then you look at the speed that they're getting, and seems like, wow, that would be awesome to be doing that. And so he kind of got me into it. I, you know, got educated on it, gave me videos, gave me some pointers. And so I went and saw a event over in Tahoe, California. And I was, during that time, I was in Denver. And it was a spontaneous thing where I said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. You know, I have nothing really else to do. I know I need to do something, especially with the skiing sport. And I'll tell you more about that later. But basically, I got into it and decided to go to the pawn shop, get a motorcycle helmet, a full face motorcycle helmet, old downhill suit, and just drove overnight, all night, to get there, to get that registration. Well, got there, no sleep whatsoever. It was snowing like crazy over there, and first time ever there in California, period, just a, you know, ski period. And of course it's Sierra Summit and whatnot, but it was all about speed during that time, and went down and qualified for, surprisingly, I don't know how, because it's, my shield was fogged up, and so I had to lift it up. And so it was like a yard sale, basically, wearing a yard sale. Didn't do a yard sale, but I looked like one.
That's pretty well. What'd you go? You went the whopping speed of what, 77 miles an hour that weekend?
Probably something like that. I know it was not the fastest. This was probably more of the last of who knew back in the day, but at least I gave it a shot and went out of that comfort zone and really made that effort to do it. And that's where I got kind of hooked to go to speed skiing, qualified for that. And another year later, raised some money to go to Europe for the first time and went over to, I believe it was Vars, France, my first race. And that's where I kind of got hooked from there.
Ross, just a couple more questions, and then we're going to have Shannon Bahrke on deck. When you set that world speed record in Les Arcs, I know is one of the fastest courses in the world. What do you look for in a really good speed skiing track like Les Arcs?
Well, definitely it's the time of year as well. It's spring conditions. Track has to be smooth as ever. It's older snow, obviously. It's, so you're going to have the beads there that's going to benefit you with the sun and the weather and the moisture and whatnot. Everything has to be perfect. No wind, no clouds, just perfectly just settle at, a good weather, spring weather type. And as well as your mind, your body, and your spirit needs to be with it as well. We go up in stages. We go from the lowest starting point all the way to the top. During that time, there was about 80 racers representing 34, 35 countries. Well, each stage you have a cutting off point. So, they cut off so many people, 35, 25, 10, 15, and then 10. And so basically your top 15 are the ones that are going to be at the very top. And I was one of them. I think during that time I was in 9th place. So they reversed everything. So basically it was, I was starting 6th or something like that. And so reversed it and I was in the zone. It was the coolest thing ever because I wanted to hear the helicopters, the crowd and everything, but I couldn't hear it because I was in that zone. And it was, that was the first time I really kind of wanted to hear things, but I couldn't. So I did my run and literally it was so good. It was so perfect until the very end. It popped up just a tad. And that wind pressure is so intense. I mean, it just really tears you apart. So I'm just holding as much as I could and literally screaming in my helmet. It's like, hold on. And then hit the finish line, and I felt like, oh man, I just lost everything. I knew I was losing speed during the whole time and kind of just was down on myself. And then in the distance, there was a Jumbotron with the speed and it said 240 and I thought it said like 241. So I was like, okay, at least I went 150 miles an hour. So I was really happy about that. I said, well, that'll be good. I didn't get anything else. And then I got closer and closer and closer. And then the old national record was 246. So I got closer and then I saw it was 247.934 kph. I said, no way, and I was excited. But the person who had that record was after me. So I had to wait a couple of racers before he went down, and he actually got 246. So that's your new American record in 2006 that still holds. And as of April 19th, it'll be 18 years that I have it.
Well, it'll be a day to celebrate. Ross, we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stick with us. We're going to do some Q&A later, but we're going to move on now to Shannon Bahrke. But Ross, congratulations on your upcoming induction into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And we're going to move now to Shannon Bahrke, one of the real bright spots of mogul skiing over the last few decades. And Shannon is a two-time Olympic medalist. She won silver medal in 2002, and then the bronze medal in 2010. Also won the World Cup title. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Shannon, welcome. Were you out skiing today?
Thank you. No, I was yesterday and today I just walked in the rain. So that's why this is happening.
By the way, we were excited to have your daughter Zoe, 11 years old, a mogul skier with Wasatch Freestyle. Really happy to have her at the state capitol last week with Governor Spencer Cox as we pushed the button on the Olympic bid for Salt Lake City.
It was so much fun. I mean, we just have Olympic spirit in our blood. So that she was able to participate and share in what is so special to me was just, it was the best. We both had, I watched from afar and she did it. And so it really meant a lot to us.
It was great. Shannon, every time I interview you, I like to go back to a moment that a lot of people might really not remember. They certainly know your silver medal at Deer Valley in 2002 and up at Whistler in, or not at Whistler, but in Vancouver in 2010. But over New Year's, before the Olympics in 2002, you were just a young, little bit unknown skier at that time, and you came through with the big upset, winning the Gold Cup to earn an automatic berth in the Olympics. Let's go back to that night under the lights at Deer Valley, and what did that mean to you and your career?
It meant everything. You know, before that, we have about 7 World Cups to make the Olympics. And in the first 4 leading up to that event, I wasn't even in the top 30. So I really thought that, oh my gosh, like this dream that I've had, it's slowly and quickly going through my fingers, you know, out of control, that I'm not going to make my dream happen. So that day, it was actually during the day that we competed, and it just took every ounce of mental toughness that I had just learned from a hypnotherapist and been working with him for 3 or 4 weeks, to really bring it all together and understand how I can execute in, you know, those super high pressure situations. I had never really thought about it before. But one story that I always really love to tell is that night, after I had won, and the crazy thing, I won $10,000, which was like the most money that I'd ever even seen in one place at that time. So like a check for 10,000, I was like, woo, I felt like a millionaire. And then, you know, being the first person to know that I was going to the Olympics was just amazing. And that night was actually the aerials competition. And I remember I remember being there and hearing the national anthem before that the aerialists were competing, and I was holding my mom and dad's hand. And I just looked over to my dad, and my dad's just not a crier, like not at all. He's just a very stoic man with a big mustache. And I looked over and he was crying, and I was like, Dad, what's wrong? Are you okay? And he just said, I'm so happy. I'm so proud. My baby's going to the Olympics. And anything that ever happened that moment after my Olympic medals, you know, making 2 more Olympic teams, that was a moment that I'll never forget, because all of the hard work that my parents had sacrificed for me to make my dad proud is everything. So that is something that I will never forget and was forever ingrained in my mind.
About 5 weeks later, they were in the same finish area in Deer Valley. You were up at the top of Champion, which is a really difficult run, one of the toughest moguls runs. What's going through your mind up on the top there when you know you've got a chance here? Your family's down below, all your fans. What's going through your mind?
Well, the first run, so we have 2 runs. Now it's a little bit different, but back in the day we had 2 runs. In the first run, I will never forget. Oh my God, I was so nervous. I felt like such an imposter in my own body. Like, oh my gosh, I know how to do this, but I looked down at my legs and they just felt like cement blocks, and I felt like a deer in headlights. I just felt like, oh my gosh, this is way too big a moment for me. This little girl from California with a big dream. Like, how am I here right now? Can't I just like tap in somebody else? But my legs worked, everything was good. And when I came back around for the second run, for the final run, I had this peace that came over me. I've never had it before or since that moment, but it was just that my whole being, my soul, everything, and my whole body was meant to be in that moment. And I'll never forget looking up at the sky, and it was just this beautiful bluebird day. And I just felt so lucky to be alive that day. Then I looked at the mountains as they were covered with a fresh blanket of the greatest snow on earth. And I just thought about the mountains that I'd competed in and that they're a part of my soul. And I looked at my friends and family and all of Team USA down there. And then I looked at the task at hand, 300 yards of moguls, which are the best, and 2 jumps, and just that I was meant for that moment. And I just stood in that gate and they asked me Olympian ready. And I've never been more ready in my whole life to be able to do something that I was born to do.
Shannon, just one more question on another area that I don't think a lot of people really think about when they think about you, but a year later, you really changed your sport. You pioneered new tricks. The FIS had now allowed inverted aerials on the jumps, on the mogul run, and you did that D-spin to perfection. Talk about your approach to that season and what you did to change your sport forever.
Well, for the most part, I was scared out of my mind. I remember Johnny working on it and he would fall and crash and like we just thought he was going to die every time he tried it. So we all thought he was crazy. And then slowly but surely he started to land it and then he executed in the Olympics and then they okayed it in our sport and we're going like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to do that. I have no idea how, like I didn't grow up doing that. How are we supposed to do that now?" And I think that was a real pivotal point in my career to understand, wow, you can either just shy away from this fear and this thing that seems way bigger than I am, or I can lean into it. So I actually flew up to Toronto with Emily Cook, who is an aerialist, and we went to a trampoline big, huge warehouse and worked with some of the Canadian trampolinists to learn how to do that. And I just thought, well, Johnny Mosley is from where I'm from, or I'm from where Johnny Mosley is. And if he can do it and he can persevere and he can do it, then I can too. So it really meant a lot to me to be able to be the first girl with so much fear and anxiety in my heart to execute that and start our sport in a new era. So it really meant a lot.
Well, it's real. I think of you every time I watch Moguls now and what you did. Shannon Bahrke, congratulations on your induction into the Hall of Fame. We look forward to seeing you at the induction here in Park City in another couple of weeks.
Yay, thank you. And congrats to everybody else. This is so exciting.
Shannon Bahrke, just a bundle of energy. And we're going to bring in now another Olympic champion, Billy Demong. What a career he had. Billy is... Yeah, Billy, you're with us, right? Do I have you on audio there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Billy Demong, Olympic champion from 2010 in Nordic combined, grew up in the Lake Placid region, now lives right here in Park City, Utah. Has a couple of young boys who are pursuing different careers in winter sports right now. And Billy, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you grew up in Lake Placid or nearby Lake Placid. You were actually born just a month after the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. How did being in Lake Placid, being in that Olympic region, how did that impact you as a young athlete?
Yeah, Tom, I mean, I think one of the most notable things is I don't come from like a big historical ski family. Neither of my parents, my dad aspired to ski when he moved to the Adirondack region as a fisheries biologist. My mom is actually a Korean war baby, so she's half American, half Korean, had been living in Germany at one point. So this was not on anybody's radar. It wasn't like a historical thing for our family, but, they engaged in the Olympic Games in 1980. I was always told about being at Eric Heiden's 5 medal ceremonies out on Mirror Lake, hearing the ice crack. And there was a whole slew actually of 8, 7, 8, 9-month pregnant women who were going to the events together. So a lot of my Nordic team as a kid were these other kids. And I have to say, like, I don't think that had I not grown up in Saranac Lake, which is really next door to Lake Placid, I ever would have had the opportunity to do some of the things I did, and predominantly ski jumping. Cross country, more widely available, still regional dependent, but ski jumping was the thing that caught my eye as a young Bill Koch League cross country skier, and really it was the thing that I wanted so much at the early age of like 9 or 10. And so, having those huge ski jumps, if any of you have ever driven into Lake Placid, which I'm sure most people on this call have, obviously the 120-meter ski jump, 26 stories off the ground, looming over the landscape, it was terrifying, and also it was aspirational for me as a kid. So, obviously growing up in the limelight of the games, my parents getting their first taste of the whole games experience there, and then kind of nudging me towards some of these disciplines, especially cross country. I think that was really one of the penultimate rewards of growing up in that region.
Bill, you eventually went down that Nordic combined pathway, and you did it with a number of other athletes nationally. And there was a period in the 2000s where the U.S. was one of the strongest teams in the world. Hall of Famer Johnny Spillane, inducted a few years ago, Todd Lodwick, and others. What was it that came together? What was the chemistry that allowed you guys to be such a force on the World Cup?
I think, Tom, we've seen a transition over my lifetime, over my career, of the Olympic movement being sort of a college age pursuit. The best athletes from around the world being college age. Really, during the 80s and 90s, it became an older group. But realistically, right around the time I was maturing, around the 98 games, it really became the true best in the world, the career-driven athletes. And I think that had prevented some Americans in the previous generations from going the distance. And for us, it was realizing that this was a goal. It was owning it together. Much credit goes to the coaching staff in the 90s, Tom Stites, Zane Palmer, and eventually some of our former teammates, Dave Jarrett, for keeping us hungry and fighting until we owned that goal. So really, going into the 2002 games, we were medal hopefuls, and we were trying to build the belief that we could do it. But once we came out of that Olympics empty-handed in our early to mid-20s, we realized that we wanted to do it and that we could do it, and we just had to give ourselves more time. And then we took a more mature approach to that, and we did ski for another 2 games as a team. And that's really where you saw between 2002 and 2006, a lot of us became podium athletes on the World Cup, made us medal contenders. And then by 2006 to 2010, we swept the world championships. We won a lot of medals at that level, a lot of World Cup medals. And so really going into 2010, we finally arrived as the team to beat. And I think we also, not only were we positioned as mature athletes to be the team to beat, we were also mature adults. And we knew going in that we had everything to gain and nothing to lose. Like, our moms weren't going to hate us if we failed to deliver in Vancouver. And so we were able to really take the whole thing in stride and enjoy the journey in our 4th Olympic Games and 5th for, I think, Todd, and execute well and bring home America's first medals in the sport.
Yeah, it was truly amazing. Just one last question, and I know that you need to get Liam, you need to pick up Liam, but you now have 2 young boys, Ren and Liam, who are pursuing careers in winter sport, and it's for fun at this point. How does it feel to be a father of young athletes and helping to guide them through the pathway?
Well, and I hope, everybody puts a blurb about this in for all the parents out there. It's really exciting because all the life lessons that I got out of sport, they're now getting or starting to get. And so, it's great that they have aspirations higher than I had at their ages, for sure. But on the flip side, it's so cool to see them grow and develop as humans through sport and gain all the lessons, not just physically, but especially socially and mentally. And in fact, Tom knows, I'm out here coaching actually at the farm at White Pine. So I dove into the truck for a minute here to chat with everybody, and I wish I could stay on longer, but it's really a joy for me, not just as a father, but also as a coach of U12 and U14 athletes, to instill all the great people skills that we can get out of our skiing sports.
Well, Bill, it's great to have you around the Park City community. Congratulations on your induction into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. Olympic champion, Bill Demong.
Thank you very much, Tom.
We're going to bring in now Hank Kashiwa. And Hank, as many of you know, a well-known figure in the sport, was the 1975 World Pro Skiing Champion. He and brother Bucky went on to found the Volant Ski Company, and Hank then went on to be the marketing director for the Yellowstone Club, where he now serves still as an ambassador. And Hank, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Where are you coming to us from tonight?
My Yellowstone Club home office.
And were you out on the hill today?
No, I wasn't today. Tomorrow, we've had some good snow lately, and I've been catching that. It's pretty good.
So, Hank, just to kind of set the stage, you grew up in Old Forge, New York, and tell us about how did you first get into the sport?
Well, I usually say a very curt answer, saying it's my mother's foot. I was actually, just back up a little bit in your history books. I was born in a city in New York called Manhattan, and
there's no ski areas there.
Close by, Hunter Mountain. Anyway, my parents met at Syracuse University, My dad was in forestry school. My mom was an artist, and my dad did his field work up in the Adirondacks. And when I was old enough to play in the streets of Manhattan, my parents said, we got to get out of here, and we got to get someplace safe, because just right behind me, there came 4 other siblings. And so anyway, they moved to a little town called Old Forge, New York, about 50 miles north of Utica, and 80 miles southwest of Lake Placid. Somebody's raising them, yeah, Utica. But that's where I learned how to ski. I mean, and I say my mother's foot because she had another sister, the eldest of 2 sisters, in the oven, and she didn't want me under her feet. So she kicked me out of the house, and I went over to the little ski hill across the street from her house, and I put on a pair of old skis and was in a navy pea coat, and the big guys used to put me between their knees and take me up the rope tow. And I did that for a few years until I could actually hold the rope tow hard enough to keep it down on the snow.
It's an interesting, everybody has these interesting starts in the sport. I want to fast forward to your time with the World Pro Ski Tour, and in between, you had a great career in the U.S. ski team. You were in the early days of the World Cup, but I want to fast forward to the World Pro Ski Tour, and there's still pro tours today, but I think arguably that period of time in the mid 70s to late 70s was the prime time for professional skiing, the head-to-head format, a lot of media, television, and so forth. What was the scene like there when you won the title in 1975?
It was so exciting. I can tell you, I remember it like it was yesterday. And the thing about it was Bob Beatty had great foresight. If you're going to have a sport succeed, you have to have 3 things. It's like the 3-legged milking chair. You have to have good media, you have to have sponsorships, and you have to have stars. And Bob put all 3 together, and so we took off. Rocket ship. Spider was, well, actually Billy won the world. He won the gold medal in Val Gardena, and became the world champion in 1970. And then he switched over to the Pro Tour and won that tour. So he won both the amateur and the professional tours in the same year. And Bob had brought Spider in, and Spider was the perfect poster child for pro skiing. He was colorful. He was debonair. He was carefree. He did like to tip a few night before a race and didn't bother him the next day at all. But anyway, it was great times. And one of the biggest things I think that we did in pro skiing was we were able to take this parallel racing format to some of the smallest ski areas in the country. Buck Hill, Minnesota, 500 vertical feet. In 74, Jean-Claude Keely won the giant slalom there. So we had quite a time, and it was great taking it around to smaller areas.
And then just to kind of fast forward beyond that, after you retired from the sport, when you and Bucky formed Volant, what was your motivation and direction in putting that new ski company together and really developing a great American ski?
Yeah, well, it's all Bucky. Bucky's at the Los Alamos laboratory. He has his doctorate in engineering, and he gets paid a government wage. And the government is sensitive to big companies trying to come in and steal the brain power that exists at Los Alamos. So they're smart enough to give their employees 45 days of paid vacation every year. and encourage them to do something entrepreneurial on them by themselves. So Bucky had in mind having a steel cap ski to be precise. And it had features that you could make it softer, and it would keep its torsional rigidity up, so it would turn very easy and hold extremely well. And so he pounded out a pair of demo or experimental Volant skis in his garage. They live in Santa Fe now. And they were made of carbon steel, so they didn't have much flex to them, and they were easily broken. But he proved his theory that you can make this ski, make it soft, and still hold.
And just finally, one last thing. You went from there to the Yellowstone Club. And I know you're still up there today as an ambassador, but talk a little bit about the place that resorts like the Yellowstone Club, private resorts like that. What is their place in skiing today?
Well, it's really a private community. We don't call it a resort at all. It's the world's only private ski and golf community, and it has a place in the world of skiing in that we have some high profile members. We have some very low profile members, and it gives both high and low profile members the opportunity to come and ski, enjoy the summer, golf, all the recreational activities that each season has to offer, and not be bothered. We have a very strict policy with all the employees that no pictures taken, put on social media. You're out the door immediately if they do that. So it's quite a place. When I got here in 2001, we had 4 miles of paved road. We now have 51 miles of paved road. We have 865 members, and we're headed to our maximum of 914 members.
Well, Hank, we congratulate you on your induction into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Take some turns for us tomorrow. Hank Kashiwa, the 1975 World Pro Tour title winner.
Thanks, Tom.
Great to have Hank with us here. We're going to bring on now Jake Moe to talk a little bit about powder. I'll bring Jake in here. And I don't know, Jake, I don't see David on the call. David, are you here? If you are, speak up. But I think most people are pretty familiar with the basic history of powder, where in 1972, this man, Jake Moe, and his brother David really changed the sport. Jake, congratulations and thanks for joining us. Are you in Sun Valley today?
Yes, I am. And Curtis and I had a spectacular time on the hill today. It was so much fun.
Let's go back to the beginning. And where did this crazy idea to start a magazine, where did this get conceived?
Here's what happened. When I joined the Ski Patrol in 1968-69, I entered a group of 27 individuals that were part of the patrol. And we're essentially, the patrol at Sun Valley has a steep history in collecting really great racers, all the way back to Dick Buick in the early 50s, where the U.S. ski team trained as part of the Ski Patrol because of the Harriman Cup. Anyway, so in that 68, 69, 70, 71, 72 season, I was skiing with all these really great skiers, from the performers, Jim Stilling and Pat Bauman and Charlie McWilliams, and then John Claude Keeley would come into town. And there was a tremendous amount of quality skiing. And quite frankly, inside me, I had this realization that this greatness should be somehow communicated or publicized. It was just way beyond my expectations to be around such phenomenal athletes. And I was doing it on a daily basis as a patrolman. And so consequently, there was this longing to essentially spread the news that we had in Sun Valley this cadre of absolutely phenomenal athletes. And that was the first genesis to Powder Magazine.
So as you put it together, and it's fun to look back on the early issues now. And initially it was essentially an annual photo gallery. But when you put together the initial issues, what was driving you to take the direction you did, to be photography upfront and short content, but really deep content? How did you put this together, or was it just dumb luck?
No, it wasn't dumb luck. Actually, what was that old saying? There are no new ideas, just an adjustment of old
Yeah.
systems or whatever. So one of the magazines that we loved, Dave and I both loved, was the Ascent Journal, and it was a climbing journal. And basically, that magazine was stunning in its photographic display of mountains. It was unbelievable back in the 60s and 70s. And so we had that kind of as a thumb guide we'd look through. And so in the first issues of Powder magazine, you would see just photos of mountains, no skier, just mountains, because we were so enthralled with the playground that we were involved in. And so consequently, obviously there were shots of skiers in amongst those mountains, but many times we would look at a photographic display and say, we can't put any people in this. This is just too gorgeous. And so we really got a lot of inspiration from magazines like Ascent. I just remember being enthralled with what they did. And we took some of that idea and brought it to the ski community.
Without question, Jake, you were creating a lifestyle for the sport. You were creating something in your images and your pages that people wanted to emulate. Was there a point in time where you really started to recognize what it was that you had created?
Yes, and along the way, we really got this emotional cult-like response to the magazine. Now today, as Curtis and I were finishing the run, a guy and his son, approached me and said, could you take our picture? We've never been to Sun Valley. We're from New York. And could you take a father and son picture? And I said, yeah. And then I said, where's your favorite place to ski? And they said, Jackson. And I said, why do you like Jackson? They said, because of Powder skiing. And I said, well, I don't know really how to put this. But in fact, I'm really, awkward about this. But on this mountain, I started a magazine called Powder. Okay. And these two, the father and son, just fainted. They said all of the magazines of Powder were all over their walls growing up. They were throughout the house, and they just went bananas. And here was the deal, is that Powder basically had a couple of things going that Ski and Skiing did not. And that is, number one, we maximized our advertising to 40% of the total book. So that means a 150-page book. You had 100 pages of great content. And Ski and Skiing were running at about 70% advertising. Now, additionally, we limited our advertising to ski companies. So as you paged through a copy of Powder, you saw Volant ads, you saw, Nordica ads and so forth. You did not see cigarette ads, car ads, or Jack Daniels ads. And so consequently, we tried to pack the entire issue, page after page, whether advertising or editorial, in all skiing.
Jake, last question. You actually exited the magazine, went on to other business ventures. Your brother stayed on for a while. But as you look back, 50 years later, as you look back on it now, how do you see the Powder culture living on in the sport today?
That's a great question, Tom. I was at a major event several years ago that Powder put on called the Powder Photo Awards, and we were in actually Salt Lake, and all of the boutique ski companies were there, and they would come up to me and say, "Wow, thanks for starting the magazine. Thanks for starting the magazine." And I turned around and say, no, the thanks goes to you guys, because when we started Powder magazine, less than 10% of the people knew how to ski Powder. So on a consistent snow after snow after snow day at Sun Valley, the people were at the lodge. They weren't on the mountain, because we had 63 underfoot not 9,800 foot or 120 foot. The skis were 63, 65, 6,600 foot. And so only 10% or less could be ski powder. So we named powder as the epitome, something to strive for. So I turned to those boutique ski companies that said, you guys are the ones responsible for making powder accessible to so many people, because I was on a pair of 98 yesterday in deep powder, and it was like you couldn't lose. In fact, 2 days ago, the people in Sun Valley, the locals, said they had never seen so many great turns on the mountain at any one time. We had 8 inches of new. Everybody was on 95 to 120 foot, and people were making gorgeous turns because of the equipment. So in my feeling, we started the whole ball rolling, but it was the manufacturers that really picked up the ball.
Well, you really did, and we congratulate you. Jake and David Moe inducted, or will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2 weeks. Jake, thank you so much for joining us tonight from Sun Valley.
Thank you, Tom.
And that was Jake Moe. And now we're going to go to Les Otten, and we'll bring Les in. And Les, I'll need you to unmute, and we'll add you in here. Howdy, Les. How you doing tonight?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Great to have you here. I was actually just thinking about you the other day too, as I was out at Canyons and just cruising some of those great runs that you put together. Like everybody, it's always great to go back and figure out where it all began. And what I'd like to do with you, Les, is start when you're in college or whenever it was that you got this passion in your heart for building ski resorts. How did that evolve for you?
Well, I think it started a little earlier than college. I sat in the back seat of a 1956 Chrysler Imperial, making peace between Harvey and Marcia, whose parents were taking us up to go to Hunter or Bel Air or Sterling Forest or the Concord or wherever, Grossinger's, whether we could get to from Manhattan. And fell in love with it when I was 7 years old and got to college. And when I went to sign up for fall activities, there was a desk with a sign over it says ski instructors want at Greek Peak. And I couldn't resist and went over and taught skiing for Gordon Richardson, who annoyed the hell out of Doug Pfeiffer because he was trying to tell everybody that it was down on weighting that made you turn your skis, not down, up, down. And that was a controversy back in 1967. Anyway, that got me going, and we had to do a marketing project for our business class, and a couple guys and I got together and we decided that we'd build a ski area to compete with Greek Peak in Danby, New York. And Jim Branch came up to us one day as we were looking for his opinion, and he said, "Fellas, you've got a great hill. The only problem is it's too steep." And well, we were bit by that. And of course, we were all C students. Back in 1971, if you were a C student, you weren't going to get a job in one of the big 8 accounting firms. You had to find some way to make a living. And I went up to Killington, Vermont, and for $2.25 an hour, I got to change shifts and pull grease out of bull wheels and basically do grunt work and work my way up the chain from there.
In your early days of working in the industry, you worked at Greek Peak, you worked at Killington, worked at Sunday River. You were actually manager of Sunday River by your mid-20s. But what were some of the important lessons that you learned in those early days that carried with you through your career?
It's all about the snow, stupid. I'm just listening to Jake talk about how good the powder was today. And I think that at the end of the day, the support for the industry, the support for the sport that keeps the resorts open and the lifts running so that the racers can race and the freestyle skiers and the snowboarders can use it, is that the general public is out there paying the $75, $200 a day to use the resorts. And what they want is a quality product. And I think we're talking about the skis that Hank was pioneering. I remember when I was in his shop, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, whenever that was, looking at the skis that they were building and looking at shape skis and understanding that if you took a rank amateur, you put them on a pair of shape skis that had good flex and good hold, they could rail down the hill and pretend that they were Olympic skiers. And I think, again, it's about the snow, it's about the equipment, and those are the things that I was most interested in and still am most interested in.
Let's expand that a little bit more in a broader base to guest services. You innovated a lot of customer service oriented elements when you were in your heyday. What were some of those that that you're most proud of as you look back? Things that you introduced that are maybe in use in the sport today?
I think we did a lot of things, as Jake was saying, we found some things that were done well, and then we worked at doing them better. The best example of that, I think, is Elon came out with a shaped ski to teach people how to ski. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. It was about a 4-foot ski. We tried it, and what we figured out was that if you sort of built mountains of snow that were like a luge course, put people on those skis, they actually be skiing down the hill the first day rather than the 5 days that it took for GLM. But there was a lot of pushback from PSIA. And what we recognized was that we needed to sort of close our minds to what everybody else was saying about what we were doing and go forward with something that we ended up calling Perfect Turn. But what happened with that was it worked so well that we needed the bigger ski. We needed the 5-foot ski. And then we realized, at the time we were negotiating to buy all the Killington resorts, we realized that we needed to go forward with this and sort of change the whole way GLM was working and move it into the shape ski world. So we needed 10,000 pairs of skis. Mm-hmm. And Mike Adams and I were talking about this the other day. Elon didn't want to make the commitment in its factories to start making that many shape skis. So Hugh Harley hears about this, and he and Mike Kilchenstein come over to the office. They started talking to me about it. And I said, look, guys, I want to buy 10,000 pairs of skis. Either you're going to sell them to me, somebody's going to sell them to me. Well, they call up Jacques Rodet, and about 3 days later, Jacques shows up. And he looks at me and says, you're really going to buy 10,000 pairs of skis? I said, yes, I am. 10,000 pairs of skis. I need them here by October 1st so that we can mount them and put them in all the shops. Because at that point, it was like 8-9 companies in the East that we were managing, running, owning. They came through. But before they came through, there was a very loud Spanish conversation that took place when Jacques went into the room where my secretary was, and kicked her out, sat on the phone and talked to their Spanish plant, and basically told the manager there that if he didn't come across and make the skis, they'd get fired. Now, the pushback, if we all remember that period of time, was the Europeans were saying, it's just an American fad, it's going to go away. And of course, we now know that it wasn't a fad. The proof of that conversation, or not the proof of it, the upshot of that conversation was sometime around 1997, 98. I get a case of 1995 Dom Perignon from Rossignol and Jacques Rodet, and I have the last bottle, and I'm going to bring it with me to Park City.
Great, I love that. That'll be a nice feature that night. Just one last question, Les, is, you know, it was fun looking back at your bio and looking at the accomplishments that you had in the development of the American Skiing Company. And of course, it touched us out here in Park City with the Canyons. But as you look across the ski industry today, I'm sure you see those touch points that you actually created back 20, 25, 30 years ago. Does that give you a special sense of pride in looking where the industry has come and knowing that you were a part of that innovation a few decades ago?
Yeah, I think so. Tom, for me, it's not what I did, it's what I'm going to do. So I had a hard time with this whole recognition thing, as you all remember. I was the reluctant candidate, and I think it's a great honor, and I think everybody that's coming in is a fantastic group of people. By the way, I should tell Billy, who's not on the phone anymore, my family comes from Tupper Lake, which is right next door to Saranac, which is right next door to Lake Placid. And Hank, if you're still listening, I was born in Manhattan too, so that's two of us that made it out of the city in one piece. So if I'm trying to answer your question and follow continuity, even though I'm almost 75 years old, I would say for me, it's not what I did, it's what I'm going to do. It's the opportunity. The last piece of this is the one thing, if you ask me what I thought I would be remembered for, it would probably be Maine Adaptive Sports and Recreation, where we take handicapped kids with spina bifida, vets that have lost their legs. We teach them free. It's a completely free program. And it's the one thing that I can look back on that's still going, making the most difference of anything that I've done, me personally, giving the opportunity for people to ski. Remember, my last remark will be, skiing is the most fun two people can have standing up with their clothes on.
Yeah, I love it. Look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Les Otten inducted into, or will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2 weeks. Les, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, I'd like to welcome Mike Porter. Mike has been a longtime snow sports educator. We're going to learn a little bit more about him now. But Mike, where are you today? Are you at your home in Vail?
Yep, still here.
And
skiing every day.
How was skiing today?
It's been good. It's been great. All week has been great.
Well, let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about how you initially got into the sport, not necessarily a traditional way, but what's your origin in getting into skiing as a young boy?
We didn't have a skiing family at all. My mother was at a business meeting, and one of the electives was the skiing elective at Yosemite Badger Pass, and she went up there and tried it. Came back and told my dad our family's going to learn to ski. And like 2 weeks later, we were on a ski week.
And you had the whole family up there, right?
Yeah, it was just my brother and my mother. My dad stayed at home working. And that was pretty good because I got a ski week with my mom. And then my dad got jealous that my mother was 5 days ahead of him in skiing. So he wanted to go up the next weekend. So I went with him, and I just alternated between parents.
So let's fast forward to your time as a young instructor. You taught at Homewood, you taught at Alpine Meadows. And at that time, a lot of the ski schools were really siloed. There were foreign instructors and different techniques at different ski areas. How did you see things then? And what kind of got in your mind to seek to try to standardize things a little bit?
Well, I mean, to me, it was always interesting, the competition. It was all about ski mechanics, the French method versus Austrian method versus a Friedel Pfeiffer. So that's how I initially got into it. And then I was able to go work in Australia. And I went down there, and it's pouring rain in Australia. It's foggy in Australia. And the people were coming every day for ski weeks. I mean, it's pouring rain, and you think nobody's going to show up. And they do, and they have a great time. And we all lived at the same mountain. So you see people in the evening, and they're telling the stories. And I realized that skiing had a lot more to do than just technique. I mean, who could learn in a pouring rain? You went out, you had fun, you crashed, you made some good turns, and it really became more of a life experience. And it brought people together and sharing. And then from there, I worked in Austria, and their traditional ski weeks, and it was a little bit different, but a lot of it, you learn to ski just well enough to get to the next village or to get to a village to have lunch. And then went to another one to have your morning coffee or your afternoon schnapps. And so that was a whole different perspective than in the US, where it was just sort of a ski factory. How do you do mechanics? And I realized there's a lot more life skills, and people enjoyed it, and it brought people together, families together, groups together. So that was really the motivation when I came back to the US to start saying, I think there's other opportunities for us.
Mike, you found your way onto the PSIA demo team. You went to Interski, and then you actually did the lobbying to get the demo team to be an annual team, not just a team every 4 years for Interski. With that PSIA demo team, how does that really help advocate for different techniques in instruction? Give us a little bit of 411 on how that works in the education world.
Well, a lot of times when you go to Interski, you have presentations from all, at that time, the major skiing nations. So you saw their points of view, what was going on, and there was indoor sessions too, where they talked about their philosophy, who their customer was. So basically, you had a great world exposure right there that the average instructor in the U.S. wouldn't get. I mean, you're limited maybe to your resort and somewhat your region. So all of a sudden, you have a whole bunch of great ideas. We said we need to disperse them. And you just can't write articles. I mean, it's beyond that. You want to get people involved, get them part of the ambiance, and share that message. And that's where we came back and said, we need to do this more. And part of our job when we came back is that we'd go to the different regions across the U.S. And the reality is how people ski in Vermont can be different than in Michigan or Wisconsin to the West Coast. So it's just regularly to collaborate. Basically, we've talked so much about collaboration now. It was just this idea. You just share these ideas, you get people motivated, you get them excited. And it isn't all this book learning stuff or this certification stuff. It was real skiing.
One last question for you, Mike. As you look back on your amazing career in snow sports education, what is the thing that has brought you the most joy at being involved in the sport?
I think it's the life stories you get where people come back and said, you know, I never had confidence, but after skiing and working with this, I gained so much confidence in how it helped me in life, or it helped our family, or it made changes in real life. It's not, oh, I got better. It's just gaining confidence, gaining security, finding a great way to interact with your family, your parents, your peer groups, just breaking the mold, because it's one of the only sports you literally can do from youth till your deathbed. You know, people can go out, they have fun, they interact and all this. And I mean, you can just take the same lift. People take 4 different runs, meet at the bottom, go back up again, have a good time. And you tell stories. I mean, every day you tell your war stories. You did this and that. It just breaks down that mold of, and we have so much problems now. How do you communicate? Even with this internet age, people need to talk. They need to share ideas, and it's a great way to open up. And so it's every day is still rewarding. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, I think the third day I skied, I probably had as much fun as I did in my 40s when I thought I was making really good turns. I mean, it's the same excitement, same thrill, same war stories.
Nothing like a good chairlift conversation, right?
Exactly.
Mike Porter, congratulations. We look forward to seeing you in Park City for the induction in 2 weeks. Mike Porter, snow sports educator. And we've run our hour, but if we do have any questions from the group, we'll maybe take 1 or 2 if we have them. If you do, just put up your hand or give me a shout out, unmute, and or put it in the chat. Does anybody have any specific questions? Charlie, go ahead. Charlie Sanders.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. And what a great program. It's so fantastic to be around adventurous and articulate, creative people. That's the joy. That's the conversations on the chairlift. I have a quick question for Ross, if he's still on. Ross, you know, you and I have had some fun together on social media, and I've gotten the opportunity to enjoy how much you bring to your own community in terms of inspiration for kids. And I don't want to embarrass you by saying this, but in the music industry, my work with the Code Talkers, with the Native American Music Association, your relationship with these kids reminds me, and I saw it in person in Sun Valley with you, of the incredible dignity and teaching prowess that they brought to the table. I don't want to be presumptuous to suggest we can be of help, but is there a way our community can be helpful to you and in you taking full advantage of the opportunity that you have to make of that kind of hero worship that you may want to make?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I had kids programs back in the days, you know, starting out with the Southern Ute near Durango, Colorado, to growing to be over 80 students from Oklahoma that's never seen mountains before, coming over to Colorado, seeing the mountains itself, seeing their eyes so big, and then realizing they're going to actually go down that mountain, and having the community involved, you know, donating, sponsoring, and then as well as educating what the mountain is. As return, the native tribes do the same. They show the dances, they show the prayers, the stories, and the certain things that we do at the resort. It's really, really unique, and we all unite, and we all get something out of it. And I would love to continue that to actually make it bigger, for sure.
Well, let us know specifics here at NASJA. We'd love to be of help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Ross. And thank you, Charlie. Any other questions? We have time for one more question if we have one. If not, I want to thank you all for attending tonight, and a big thanks and a congratulations to our 7 Hall of Famers joining us 2 weeks from now. They'll be here in Park City preparing for the induction. thanks to NASJA for putting this program together tonight. I've enjoyed interviewing these athletes for you and these sport builders, great contributors to our sport. With that, we'll wish you a good night and happy trails on the hill tomorrow.